Good morning. How's everybody doing today? Um, get started. All right, there we go. Everything is looking good. I think we're in a good state. We're looking at the log observable repo right now. The main reason for that is I just went in and created a release. So there's actually a release now on for NPM. Um, this is the version that actually fixed the issue we were having. So when I originally used NX to do the release, NX packaged it up and it added the entire source directory. That's not what we wanted. We actually wanted the compiled code. Um, and so I went in and fixed that up on Thursday. And then after the stream, I found some code from a friend of mine. We used to work together. Um, and so there were a couple of things that needed to happen. The first thing is we needed to add this generator options and tell it that the package root um, is in the dist folder with the project name. And then we're using git tag as a way to resolve the dist. And then the other thing we needed to do was to go into the actual project where we built and tell it that, hey, it depends on the build step. So when we run the NX release publish, it's going to build, which will put everything in dist. And then we just tell it, hey, put everything in dist libs project name. Or no, this is the options for the package root, and that's where it's going to publish from. And that fixes our issue that we were having. It all started when, well, we added this log observable. And the issue started when we converted over from the internal library to the NPM library. And somebody had reported this to me. I just hadn't had the time to go in and investigate. And that's why I wanted to do this on stream anyway, was just to go in and investigate and see if I could figure out what was going on. So if we look now, and we go into, up with all the at symbols, here we go. So if we look now at the package, you can see that our log observable package now looks more like a release package, right? So if we take a look at like ESLint, they've got a dist folder. Looks like they publish a little bit more. No, they don't. Very, very similar, right? They've got the README. They've got a package. We aren't including a license. I should probably add a license to it. But then the index.dts is the main landing point. And this file points to the libs folder, and inside of here, it points to this DTS file. And there are a few other types that come along with it, the HSL type. So all of our types were packaged up. And then we got an ESM module and an FESM module, right? Both for 2022. And that all works. One thing I'm curious about, and we won't know until more feedback on the site, and we can actually pull this back up. So right now, we have 5 open pull requests, but they're all from Dependabot. You're not Dependabot. Renovate. Renovate is the word I was looking for. So Renovate has a bunch of chores and fixes going on that are updating packages. And then the only issues are again from Renovate. And no discussion so far. This one I created a discussion along with the release, just so people have a place to talk about releases. Um, but other than that, we're in a good spot and ready to go forward. So yeah, I just kind of jumped right in that. Hey, Vlad, thank you. Very, very kind of you to say. Um, I appreciate you showing up, and I really appreciate the compliment. Means a lot. Thank you. Yeah, I kind of jumped right in. Didn't take time to really say hi to everybody. You know, it is Sunday morning. Sundays are typically, the day when everybody gets to calm down. Um, I saw a post on Twitter today from. Do you guys still call it Twitter? I feel stupid calling it X. Um, it's just like the dumbest name ever. Um, and I don't even know. I don't know. I'll leave it be. I call it Twitter. Um, and it was from Michael Callahan, and he was just like, "Hey, what are you up to today?" I don't know, something fun. I hope. So, well, streaming for sure. That's definitely fun. Yeah. Um, it's been a little bit rainy, but it's been hot. It's pretty hot, and the rain brings out the humidity. Um, and you know, there are good and bad things about living in every kind of climate, I'm sure. Um, and some climates have more good than bad. Um, deserts are typically, I prefer, um, I don't know, I prefer something with like an ocean. But I think everybody loves the beach and loves the ocean. Maybe not. Um, but that's really expensive. And the area I grew up in, uh, I saw a while ago um, that I think it's like 80% of the US lives within 50 miles of where they were born. And then like it's 95% lives within 200 miles of where they were born. I think I don't remember the exact numbers, but it's something really crazy like that. And so I fit into the 95% that lives within 200 miles of where I was born. Um, so, I grew up here. I'm used to the desert and I'm used to the way things are. Um, anyway, long way to say, when the humidity is up on the desert heat is a lot more harsh because typically there's not a lot of humidity in the air. And so if you go stand under the shade where you're not getting the direct sun and then a breeze blows through, your sweat dehydrates and it cools you off pretty quick. That is one of the big benefits of heat in the desert. Is if you can find good shade, you can typically cool off pretty quickly. Not always, right? I mean, there are places where it gets really, really hot, but you know, in places like where I live, it doesn't get that hot. There's not that much humidity. It works out pretty nice. Anyway, let's take a look. And whenever I come back to a change, um, no, I don't have to pay for that. I just specified it as part of my package. And that's a great question, Nixia. And thank you. Welcome to the stream. Um, so let's go take a look here. Let's go to npm.js. And I am signed in. Um, and so I think here, I'm not paying anything for this scope, and maybe I need to. But I just put it up. Look at that. Now that it works, my weekly downloads actually shot way up. Um, but I just set the scope in the package. And the other thing that I was able to do is just verify that same stuff I showed you, and that we can see, that it's all there. It's a relatively small library, but it's only used for debugging. And our only, we've got a TS-lib dependency. I should specify RxJS as a dependency because it is, it's based on RxJS. I'll figure that out later. But I haven't had to do any of that. Where's my packages? Pricing. Yeah, unlimited public packages. So as long as I'm publishing, as long as I'm publishing like public, right, open source, I think my packages are free, and yeah, I didn't have to pay for anything. Yeah, not an organization. So if I was going into an organization, I may take a look at paying for it. Yeah, and I don't have any organizations here either. But I don't know. If somebody tries to take it, they probably can. I'll probably have to move my scope. I mean, it's just a small little package. If somebody wants to use that scope, that's if they want to pay for it, I'll definitely move. I'm not going to fight for the scope. So right now, that is what it is. But that's a good question that I hadn't even considered. And so thank you for raising that. That is a good thing to think about. And that's probably why a lot of people don't use, right? I'm probably using a scope that I probably shouldn't be. So I have to think about that. You raised a really, really good concern, Nixia. Thank you for the, thank you for that. And anyway, man, now I'm lost in thought about that. But anyway, so we replaced all of this stuff, and we were having issues with it building. But I did get distracted. I wanted to make sure, if we look, oh, we haven't even started. I thought we migrated NX. Oh, maybe before we started, I wanted to get. So we haven't even started. I thought we had started. So that's good to know. And this is why I like to use NCU right off the bat, is just to make sure, what do I need to upgrade? We're going to upgrade probably everything. The only stuff we aren't going to touch is this ESLint upgrade until the TypeScript. So the ESLint TypeScript stuff. And I don't even. I see Cypress. I see Jest. I see Storybook. Okay, here we go. TypeScript ESLint. Until this stuff, I think they're going to do a version bump when they have the generators to do the ESLint change for us. ESLint goes to a flat file in version 9. And so the TypeScript ESLint group wrote a good amount of information about it and just said that, hey, when the ESLint team are working on it, when their generators are in place, then the TypeScript ESLint people will pick them up and add them. When those are done, then it'll just be an automatic upgrade for us. So until that happens, we're going to leave ESLint at version 9. But other than that, I think we're going to upgrade everything and make sure everything works. Just to, we need to run this with PNPX. nx, and we just want to do our run many target equals test. Actually, let's run our linter first. I like to make sure that oh, interesting, because I have a default project. It's trying to run it. Oh, maybe it's the PNPX. Interesting. I need to run this command with PNPX. No. So PNPM exec. Oh, interesting. So what I've been doing in the past doesn't it just happened to work? Um, but adding a default target, that's very interesting. So I need to use PNPM exec. Um, if I don't run it with PNPM exec, then that's very interesting. If I so let me finish my thought. And I do this a lot. And my wife makes fun of me for it sometimes, but um, when I talk, sometimes my brain is two or three thoughts ahead of what I'm saying. Um, and the way that comes out when I'm in that mode is I stop sentences mid thought, or yeah, that's probably the biggest way that it comes out is my sentences stop mid thought, and I don't continue on, right? And it's really frustrating for the people listening to it. So um, oh, we've got a bunch of stuff to clean up. I want to go in and clean this stuff up before we move on. Um, enforce module boundaries. Interesting. Um, but yeah, let's go clean up these lint issues. This one's really interesting to me. I'm wondering why in a test we're using the NX enforce module boundaries. Um, but let's take a look at this cell component and just prefer expect assertions. Let's take a look at our cell component tests. Figure out what we're doing wrong there. So, like, wait, why is this not working? It's not working because you're in the wrong thing. You want to be in WebStorm. And what do I have changed here? Oh yeah, this is upgrade to working version of log observable. And I think you're probably right, Nixia. I probably need to fix that because I'm not an organization and I shouldn't namespace with an organization. Um, so I'll need to go in and fix that. I will. I'll have to see what happens. Because there are people that are using it, and so changing it now is a bit of a mess, and I should have thought that through a bit better. Very new at this stuff. Anyway, let's go take a look at our cell component test, right? Cell.component tests. So inside of here, we have a few linter errors. We've also got some issues with Angular testing library. But the first issue we've got, what are my lint issues here? Cell component.test on line 73, 88. So every test should either have an expect or an assertion. It does. I think it's failing because it can't read this, and that's just causing more issues. Green.get test. So we are awaiting that, so it won't hit this until it's done. We'll get that figured out. Here, what do we have here? Why can't I see them? We can look at stuff here, right? This import can be shortened. Yes, lint. Every test should either have expect.assertions or expect has assertions as its first expression. But it doesn't care about this one. It cares specifically about this one. What is it about this one? Oh, you know what? It's async. I'll bet that's the issue. So if we go here, does that open it in my browser? Oh no, it just added it here. Not what we want. Go ahead. Every test should have this. More actions. I want, so typically there's a way to go. Typically there's a way to go to the rule, and maybe I'm thinking of something else, but ESLint just expect dot assertions. I want to see what this rule is. And this is why I like, this is made when there's no call to expect. That's fine. That is not the rule. What is this rule called? Add. No, what is the rule called? Typically, you get the rule name too. expect dot assertions. Expect. Is this the rule? It looks like it was added a few months ago. Yeah, expect dot assertions or has assertions. Ensure every test to have either expect dot assertions or expect dot has assertions as its first expression. So if you do expect dot assertions with a string that's not a number, that results in a warning. Rule checks any test that matches at least one of the patterns presented by enabled options. Think or rather than and. So every test rule checks every test where called either expect.has assertions or expect.assertions. And it sounds like we've got the async keyword set to true because it's not marking anything that's not async. Which makes sense. I actually like this rule because in your tests, so here we can say, hey, we expect to have one assertion. And so now this test will fail if, for example, I were to remove this await. No, it wouldn't. Well, yeah. With an async function, it is possible for the test to end. So if I were to call render and then do a dot then and then my expect, and I remove the await, then this expect wouldn't run. The way we've written it now, we will hit the assertion even if I were to remove the await. But in async tests, it's very easy to accidentally create a situation where your expects aren't hit. And so I actually like whatever turned this on. I appreciate it because we should get one assertion. And so it's only going to trigger for our async methods. So this one is async. So we're just going to tell it, hey, we expect not 10 assertions. Why does it think we were going to get 10 assertions? Oh, maybe we are. 1, 2, ooh. We do expect quite a few assertions here. We expect quite a few more. So there's 10 assertions here. So we would expect, well, no, there's actually 20 assertions here. And here there's another 4. So, wow, we expect 24 assertions. Is that really the case? That's crazy. And then this last one is async also. And we expect saying 8 assertions. So we've got our focus, and then we've got that. Really, we've got 4 assertions here. So we're going to make that 4. And I think that's going to clean up everything outside of one last warning that the import can be shortened. Yeah, we're not going to shorten it to Sudoku components. It doesn't make sense to use a barrel file. That's just going to result in a circular dependency. The rest of these tests we'll clean up here in a little bit and fix these up when we get Angular testing library upgraded. But until that happens, these tests are just not going to compile, unfortunately. And so the next one that we've got is the grid.component.cypress test. Grid.component.cypress UI. Where's that file? It's in grid.components.cy.ts. Grid.components. Yes. Do we have a cy.ts here? We do. Oh, it's because I use Control T and not Control P. I do grid.components. There we go. So inside of here, we've got this issue at the very top. Cell value. Oh, I didn't have the NX enforced. That's the rule that's being violated here. But we're importing this from the wrong place. So we can go fix that. Now, if we go up to the top, interesting. So this really should be imported from @sudo/domain. And that worked. I'm curious why. We've got 2 other warnings. Duplicated fragment. I'm fine with duplicated fragments in tests. And the reason for that is that when you start abstracting tests, you make tests harder to think about. And so I'm fine with duplicated code fragments in tests. So grid store has a bunch of stuff we need to clean up. And these are all NGRX rules. So update or explicit return type. Let's go fix our grid.store. And this is because we added the NGRX linting rules. And so they're going to help us out. So here, let's go here. This will be easier. So this updater should have an explicit return type. So our updater function, we're relying on it to return a subscription. Create grid state that. So the call state returns that, but updater, we're relying on updater. What are we relying on updater? Updater has a function. I think it's this function that we need to type, and it should just return. So if we look at this function here, if we look at the updater, it's probably the easiest to see. We can see that we take in the value is a function that takes in this and returns a grid state. So it has to be a function. This needs to be our I think we can infer the or we can add. Yeah, there we go. Oh, so it just returns a grid state. Well, that's easy. I thought I needed to make it a function, but really it just needs to return a grid state. So all of these just need to return grid states. So we'll go ahead and make this one return a grid state. And that's going. The reason that we're doing this is it helps the typing, right? So if we accidentally break one of these updaters, because we've typed this function, we're going to have to go in and make some considerations around it. So this is going to return a grid state. And it does feel a little bit like boilerplate. There are certain kinds of things that sometimes get called boilerplate, but they wind up adding guardrails, right? TypeScript isn't going to complain about this because it can easily infer what we're returning. But if I change something in here so that it returns a string or something like that, TypeScript will infer that, and I won't get an error. So either I have to have tests written or things like that. But this ESLint rule is smart in that it's adding a compile time check for us too. And so, yes, we are going in and we're adding grid state to everything. But we wouldn't necessarily have to, right? We could say, hey, we want a partial of a grid state returned here, or something like that, depending on what we want returned. For us, our updater should just return a grid state, and that's fine. We don't want to go too deep, but it's going to prevent like silly errors. Which do sneak in, especially as projects grow. This one, we don't need that underscored. And that's going to solve that issue. I added the underscore for the destructure, thinking, I need to destructure. Really, with destructuring, we can just say this is the second element, right, that we want to pull out. And so that's fine. Here we need to add grid state again. And these kinds of exercises are why I talk about these kinds of upgrades being Zen. They're very mechanical. So there's not a lot of mental stuff that's going through my head, right? Very, very mechanical. And that's quite often why people bring out the boilerplate word, right? Um, like, oh yeah, this is mechanical. It could be automated, probably. Um, but as I'm doing mechanical tasks in my code, it's giving me a chance to look at code, and it's giving me a chance to look at old code. And be like, does this code make sense? Should this code be here? Um, and so, that's the very Zen part. And sorry, I'm in the middle of eating breakfast, so um, that's the very Zen part, though, right? A lot of like the Zen gardens, if you go to any of the where they've specially raked lines and stuff, there's a lot of consideration into everything that happens there, but it's also very calming and peaceful. That's what I mean when I say updates like these are very Zen for me. Um, they allow me to make those considerations, and take careful consideration about what should be where in my code. But they also, I find this kind of mechanical stuff and being able to think about what's going on, to be peaceful. Um, and um, it's a nice way to get a break from a lot of the other stuff we do in coding. Um, I think that's everything. So now if we go ahead and we run our linter again, all of our lint rules should be fixed. And notice that all of our issues were in the components. That's not that surprising. Most of the code exists in the components, but now we pass. So we're going to go and we're going to say that, hey, we fixed up, we fixed up our lint issues. So we can just say, hey, fixed lint issues. That's good. And I like to fix errors and warnings with regularity. So that's why I use things like upgrades as a time to fix things like this. Because I'm going to be doing upgrades semi-regularly. One thing that really frustrates me, and it's kind of just the natural way that projects grow, but when you go into say you start a new job or you join a new team or you're part of a new organization or who knows, right? You're going into a code base that's existed for a while. And you go in and you load the code base. And in your code editor, there's all these warnings that fly through. And you're like, whoa, what's this, right? So you go in and you open up a file and there's a whole bunch of rules turned off and things like that. You're going, oh no. And then you go to build it for the first time, and your compiler output is just error, right? Tons of errors. And then you open the console, and the console has a whole bunch of errors in it too. I don't like that. It causes anxiety for me. And the reason it causes anxiety is that there's so much lurking in all of those errors and warnings. Not even errors, just warnings. There's so much lurking potential issues in those warnings. For example, this expect assertions it's a warning, but it's a good warning because it's telling us, you should tell me how many assertions you expect, because if we don't do that, then I should throw an error, right? Similar thing here with the grid store, right? You should tell me what the updater is going to return, because if you do and you change it, then I could throw a warning, right? I could throw a compiler error. And so simple warnings can hide bigger potential issues down the road. The other issue that I have with, when there's tons and tons and tons of warnings that scroll by, there's a reason that you're being warned about them. One, which we covered in part one, right? But two, all of those warnings that scroll through, you're training your brain to just ignore the output from whatever, right? So all of those warnings become noise. All of that noise, your brain's just like, yeah, just ignore it. So when a real error scrolls through and it's hidden in this huge mess of warnings, you don't notice it, right? Um, and so that's the other reason that it gives me anxiety is that often reporting a ton of warnings and doing nothing about them just trains everybody to ignore warnings or ignore errors or things like that, right? Um, and so that's why, again, another thing that I kind of find zen um, is we're taking all the distractions out so that now, when we lint, if anything shows up, like I didn't have to go through and fix these warnings, right? They aren't going to stop anything. Errors will stop, and so this one I would probably have to fix, but the rest I don't. I don't have linting set up in my CI/CD pipeline or in any pre-commit hooks, and that's why this stuff snuck in. Um, but now when we lint, there's nothing. So if anything shows up, we go, "Oh wait, what happened?" Right? Even if it's a warning, we're just like, "Oh, what happened?" And that's the benefit to cleaning this stuff up. Um, so now we're going to do pnpm exec nx run many, and we're going to run our tests. And we want to make sure that we know that there's some broken tests. We'll fix those up when we upgrade the Angular testing library. We may remove the Angular testing library because we're using component tests from Cypress, and they tend to overlap in what they do. The Angular testing library is very much a component testing library. Hey, TBD Gamer, these are going well. I keep watching you stream early in the morning. I wake up and I'm like, hey, TBD Gamer's online. It's like, oh no, he did that 2 hours ago. So, man, you've been really, really just on point lately. Good job with your streaming. Um, well, let's. You guys are interested in .NET, go check him out. He does .NET streaming, and he's extremely regular about it lately. I wake up in the morning and I get notifications on my phone and Twitch that hey, TBD Gamers live. So yeah, go check him out. Let me make sure. And I do it. I'm curious if it works there. That command may not work. Oh, do you have a YouTube channel? That links to my YouTube channel. Oh, that's hilarious. I tried to shout you out in the YouTube chat also, and didn't go so well. So let's just copy this. Oh, you do. If you want to drop your YouTube channel in Twitch, I'll post that link over on the YouTube side, um, so that anybody there can go check you out. I do remember that because you were one of the ones who talked to me. Actually, I appreciate this. TBD Gamer was the one who convinced me that I should be doing. I should be streaming to more platforms. Thank you, man. Really appreciate it. And TBD Gamer's just been a huge help. You know what? Let's do this. TBD Gamer. you show up so regularly. You're so helpful. Definitely could use. I don't even think I have a mod in chat today. So thank you for showing up. Um, you're now able to mod. Thank you. Um, really appreciate it. You've been just amazing on the streams, and I've gone and I've watched some of your replays. I enjoy your .NET content. So you and Marcus are both doing .NET content right now. Well, Marcus doesn't stream, but Marcus is doing .NET at his job. And man, it's got me interested in looking at .NET again. And so I've started watching Nick Chopsis again. Which if you guys are into .NET at all, I love his videos. I know some people, I don't know. Everybody has their opinions of people, right? I really enjoy Nick. So, but yeah, my component tests are going to fail, and the reason they're failing is because of the Angular testing library. So here, this render command, this fails. And so we need to fix this, but we'll fix this as part of the upgrade. But we're in a good place right now. The only other thing I want to do is just pnpm exec nx serve. And no problem. You've just been you've been really good, and I highly recommend you guys go follow him. Give him a yeah, go follow him. You know, we're all working. We all work hard at this, right? Content creation is not easy. There's a lot that goes on behind the scenes, and there's a lot of stuff that I'm working on for future streams. One of the things that I'm really debating is getting into just doing some generation stuff. So 2 days ago, I installed a new tool that broke all of my Comfy UI install. So I'm going back to scratch. And that's got me thinking maybe like on Thursdays for a while, I might test out just teaching people how to use Comfy UI and what that means. And potentially even comparing different workflows in Comfy UI because I really enjoy image generation. And I think when done at a high level, it turns into an art form. And there's a whole bunch there that we could take a look at. And so just teaching people how to get started is very interesting to me. And so I'm really debating just like on Thursdays doing some AI image generation stuff. But we'll see. Anyway, so it looks like everything's working. One thing I do want to do is let's get our console open. That's where it flips. We'll grab our console. And we can see that now it's coming from our imported library, but it's still working, right? And we're getting our colors and we're getting the key. We've got different colors here that tell us, we've got a whole bunch of different observables running. So that's all good. That all worked out. And you know what? I shouldn't close that because we're going to be using that a lot during the stream today. But now we're in a place where I'm comfortable making the upgrades. And this is a huge reason why unit tests are important. Because as soon as we make this upgrade, we're going to start using our tests, our linting tests, our unit tests, our component. Oh, we didn't run component tests. Yeah, let's go ahead and terminate that. And then pnpm exec nx run many. And we just do component. Maybe it's component dash test. Yeah, component dash test. And so this is going to run all of our component tests. And we did spend a bunch of time making sure that our grid works properly with component tests. And so the nice thing about this is that if we break anything with the upgrades, our grid should pick that up, because we could introduce some issues when we go zoneless. And so I'm excited to dig into that too. It is taking a little while to compile these. Something isn't right. Oh, maybe. I guess I was wrong. Something is working. So it looks like we're good. It took 48 seconds to run our tests. That's okay. They all passed, and we're good to go. So now we're in a place where I'm happy. Our unit tests pass, our component tests pass, our unit tests fail for the Angular testing library. I would like to leave it in, but we'll see what happens over the course of this upgrade. If I can't fix those unit tests, I don't want broken unit tests to be in here forever. Okay, so at this point, I'm comfortable going back and looking at the packages that we need to upgrade. I know right off the bat, we need to upgrade NX, and that's going to be the first upgrade we do. And so what I'm doing, I'm using NCU, and NCU is npm check update. I've got mine installed through Volta. I've also got my pnpm and my node. One thing we should do is take a look at what version of Node Angular 18 is tied to. So let's go here. And we're going to go to angular.dev. And we are going to search for the compatibility. And it's inside of Angular versioning and releases. And it's the version compatibility here. So this table is really helpful because it shows that version 18 supports Jest 22. Or not Jest, sorry, Node 22. Hey, Mini Sefner. Thank you for following. A Sudoku made of Sudokus. I mentioned this on Thursday. The thing that got me into Sudoku was watching Cracking the Cryptic on YouTube. A Sudoku made of Sudokus would be very interesting. So when you say that, my mind is going to like a fractal Sudoku, right? And there's like this this game. I haven't played it, but I've watched some people play it on Twitch. That messes with your perception of reality. So as you manipulate the stages and stuff, you can actually zoom in more into the stage, and maybe if you change the way you're looking at things, things line up in a certain way, and that changes the way the stage works and things like that, right? So when you're talking of a Sudoku made of Sudokus, that would be crazy. Having puzzles inside a puzzle, like a fractal Sudoku. That would be, I don't, oh, that would be weird. It would be fun, but I don't know how you would build that or how it would work. That would take a bit more thought, I think. Um, and you're nerd sniping me, man. You come here, you follow right away, and you nerd snipe me. Because now I'm like, what if we took our our Sudoku and turned it into a 9 by 9 grid? Um, and so, oh, that would be crazy. Exactly, TVD gamer. Exactly, squirrel. Like, how could we make that work? Um, oh, that would be interesting. I don't know that it would work because 1 by 9, not being able to repeat it in grid 2 or 3, um, but potentially making it so that um, the top 3 rows can't be in the same position. Oh man, ah, nerd snipe. Good job. But anyway, right off the bat, I see that Node is version 22 or higher. Great, we're gonna upgrade our Node. Um, we couldn't do it with 17. We're gonna do it with 18. TypeScript is version 5.4, and here, so 17.3 gave us 5.2 and 5.3 of TypeScript, but um, and it gave us 5.4. But when I'm doing these major upgrades, the other thing I like to do is I like to go to TypeScript Lang, um, and on the site, I like to go to the documentation. Um, where is their blog? Um, so we can go take a look at what's new, right? So in 5.2, um, we got explicit resource management, which gave us the using declaration. So inside of here, and I haven't added this. I actually forgot about this. So we can actually use using, which is a well, it's not a .NET concept, but it's where I was first introduced to it, right? Um, so TypeScript gives us the ability to do using. So to be able to use a using command, you have to implement the symbol.dispose. So if you've got to dispose, you can then use, what do they use using here? Right here. So they use a using here, and this throws, but because it throws, it still cleans up, which is really cool. So this is why I like to go into the TypeScript document and just take a look at things. So we got metadata and decorators, named anonymous tuple elements. So this is the anonymous part, the tail or the rest. But we couldn't do this before because we had named elements here, right? And so it becomes a bit of a mess, but first, second, and rest. And so now you can just leave, like you don't have to name everything. That was the other thing, is that if you had named parameters in a tuple, you had to name the rest. Here they're showing that we don't have to, right? So they're only grabbing the first two pieces, and we don't have to worry about that, right? Method usage for unions of arrays. Yeah, so array unions caused issues. They've cleaned that up in 5.2. Type in. So this one's really cool, and I need to keep coming back to this because I've been wanting to use this. But you can do type only imports, which means that it will just use the types from the file and not actually import the whole file. And that's just by adding type here. The place where that becomes nice is in tree shaking situations where you might want to just grab a type from a file, but it also includes other code. If you just pull the type, you're not going to grab all the other code, and so this won't be linked as part of the bundle, and so you can get better bundling. And you can do the same thing, with just grams, comma completions. They added automatic comma completions, inline variable refactoring. These are nice. I love that TypeScript is adding stuff like this. Yeah, and then 5.3 introduced import attributes. And this is something that we're using quite a bit in our analog and with the Angular file, or with the single file components. So in the single file components, you'll see, with type import or things like that. But we can use import attributes to say, hey, this is a JSON file. So it should only be interpreted as JSON, right? And it shouldn't be compiled to be JavaScript. Fluffy bunny, that's hilarious. Yeah, these types help give the system some information. And this is one that I'm actually looking at right now with icon files for SVGs. So with type SVG. And if we use with type SVG, can we add some extra, helpers to our tool chain, so that we can potentially cache SVGs instead of writing them over and over again? Resolution mode. I need to come in and read this stuff. Import or required. Oh, okay. So yeah, they cleaned up resolution mode. Switch true. This one was really cool when I read about it. Yeah, TypeScript has really grown, and it has a lot that's very similar to .NET. It also has a lot that's very similar to other languages, and it's very functionally driven, and just a lot of cool stuff is added to it. But this was one that I learned from these notes. But you can do switch true, and then you can do kind of a form of pattern matching. So .NET, modern .NET uses a lot of pattern matching, and you can do some really powerful stuff with pattern matching. TypeScript has a simple form of that. I like to add libraries that add pattern matching when I need it. But TypeScript has a form of pattern matching where you can do switch true, and then you can say, hey, if X is a string, it's going to fall into this case. Or if it's an array, it's going to fall into this case. Otherwise, it's going to fall into this case. So, you're telling it, hey, look for true, and then it's going to find the first case that has a true. And it's very, very similar. This reminds me a lot of the way pattern matching works in .NET. You can do switch cases that use pattern matching. And the TypeScript version is not as robust, but it is really cool that you can say, hey, look for the switch case is true, and then it starts matching, right? Or you could do switch false, and then it's going to match the first case that comes back as false. Um, that is true. And Microsoft stole them from the Java project. So .NET took all of the reason Java kind of stagnated as .NET really took off is they took a lot of the brain power from Java, and Microsoft hired them. It was a smart move on their part, but it really hurt Java at the time. Um, and this is nice that we can now, so we've got A or B, and now, is a type guard. So before this didn't work. Now it's nice that this type guard works. Symbol dot has instance. Oh, weird. Yeah. So the instance. This is one of the crazy things about JavaScript and ECMAScript is using proxies or other methods, and some things you can do. You can just override instance, right? Um, and so you can change the instance of operator, and that's why I prefer to write you know type guards um, over instance of or things like that, because somebody could come in and say, hey, we're gonna modify the has instance method, right? um, which is frustrating. um, and the left side of the instance operator will be narrowed appropriately to the predicate type. Um, so yeah, here in this class, they're changing the instance of operator, um, which completely frustrating because in any other statically typed language, right? If you say like in .NET, if you have something that extends another object and you say A is object B, object B extends A, that's going to be true. And there's nothing you can do to that is, well, I'm not going to say that because I don't know enough about .NET, but in most statically typed languages, it's very difficult to change that is operator, right? Um, .NET, not so much, or TypeScript and ECMAScript, not so much. You can do stuff like this. You can add proxies. You can do all sorts of crazy stuff. And so TypeScript is now recognizing, hey, somebody could really do this. Why they would do it, who knows? But they could do it. So if they do it, we need to look at it. And if it's there, then we need to make sure that it properly narrows. That's really cool. And access a declaration in a base class through the super key group. Yeah. So that they're handling super better inlay. Oh, that's cool. The TypeScript tooling now supports control clicking. Oh, that's cool. So you can tell it to import the types. I like that. That's really cool. Um, JS doc parsing, comparing non-normalized intersections. This is getting into deep stuff that I probably want to read about a little bit. Yeah, we're getting into some more keep stuff here. But let's take a look at TypeScript 5.4. This one I've been wanting for so long, the narrowing enclosures. So if we look, and you guys have probably run into this before, right? Where we do names.map, we throw in an anonymous method, right? This is our closure right here, because we're closing on we've got names, return URL. Yeah. So this is where our closure happens right here, right? On URL.toStream, right? And so basically what happens is this closure, so this anonymous function creates a closure around the URL variable, right? This URL variable exists, right? And it could be a string or it could be a URL. In the very, very top of the function, it says, hey, if URL is a string, just create a new URL object, right? So now we know that URL is a URL and toString works, right? But because we have a closure here, and this closure has created a scope around this variable, it is technically possible to modify URL before we reach this line of code, such that URL is not necessarily a URL. It could be a string or something else. And that's why TypeScript in the past, if you created a closer, just threw up its hands and said, yeah, we don't know what URL is. You're going to have to handle it some other way. Typically what you would do is you would add URL to the function that's being called, and that would handle it, because then it would capture what URL is at the time that you call the function, and it moves the scope of your closure from the entire function, right? Because we're capturing a parameter, to just the anonymous method itself, and so it can make inferences about that and get some type safety. Yeah, and they're actually going into this right here, and yeah, they're saying that URL, it's always created after this instance, and so yeah, this is exactly the stuff. Yeah, so here again, we're getting will invalidate is, yeah. So the nice thing about this, let variables are used in a non-hoisted function. The type checker will look for last assignment point. So this will still throw an error because technically we're setting set timeout. Could potentially set this to undefined, right? Because we could call this and value could be, who knows, right? But that's smart. No infer is really cool. I've actually used no infer before, but this one allows us to do some cool stuff. So here, right, we've got an array, and really what they want is these default colors, or these colors to be part of, the default colors. But well, the default color, let's go the other way around. We pass in a list of colors, right? Red, yellow, and blue, or red, yellow, green. The default color needs to be a subset of one of these, but here it's giving us an error that blue isn't known. But up here, yeah, so before the no infer, you you had to, you had to do stuff like this where D extends C, and then you could create a default color. After no infer, um, you just say, hey, C extends this. We've got this C, and then we just tell it, hey, we want a no infer of C. So it has to be part of C. That it's a generic, but we don't have to do all of this extra stuff. That's what this utility type's doing for us. And so now we can see that, hey, blue isn't part of this. Whereas, we could have passed blue in the past because it would just infer it to be a string. Group by changes, which are really, really nice. So object.groupBy and map.groupBy. So now we can go in and we can say, hey, process this array, group it by this. And so here they're grouping numbers into even and odds, and it's returning a map that has even and odds, and an array of the items that match even or odd. Map.groupBy works the same way. This is a really nice function that was added. Require calls, probably check import attributes and assertions. Missing parameters. So some stuff like that. But yeah, 5.4 adds some really cool tools. They're basically giving us a new jQuery at this point. It's a little bit different, right? Because jQuery runs. Oh, you're talking about the group by. Group by is actually part of the. So if we go to mdn array.groupby, object.groupby, and map.groupby, right? So it's added in ES 2024. So it's a part of ECMAScript, right? JavaScript and TypeScript. And so we've got this inventory, and it's returning a type, which is object.groupby. We take the inventory, which is an array, and then we return vegetables, fruit, or meat, and it gives us a map of that. Really, really powerful function. Something that I think everybody's written, or they've used like Lodash or jQuery, like TBD Gamer says, right? But it's now a part of just the default language, which is awesome. And so because it's been added to the language, TypeScript has added it so that it's available in all languages, and it'll add the polyfills and stuff like that. So more aggressive reduction. So you might have some type stuff in here that you might run into. I definitely recommend reading through this. We've spent quite a bit of time here, but let's go jump into it. Anyway, after we upgrade Angular, we will go into Volta, and I'll show you. So if we look at Volta, or not Volta, it's in package.json. The very, very bottom, I use Volta because I can pin versions here. So I can pin node, I can pin npm and things like that, and get consistent behavior. At work, for people who use Volta, I have yarn pinned because there are different versions of yarn, and we need a certain version of yarn to work the way we need it to work. And so we just pin yarn in our Volta, and then when you go into the directory, Volta runs and it goes, okay, set node to this and yarn to this, and you're good to go. So I love Volta as a tool. I know there are other tools out there that are similar, but with Volta, like NVM, you usually have to go, when you go into a directory, you have to remember to do NVM use and stuff like that. With Volta, I don't have to. I'll show you guys how we update that after we upgrade. We can use node 22. So first thing we want to do is we're going to do pnpm exec, and we're going to do nx migrate latest. And that's the very first command that I like to run. NX is going to go out and upgrade all of its tools first because we're going to rely on a lot of its tools. Exactly. Um, exactly, TBD gamer. And that's like over time, every language grows, right? And even like really old languages like C and C++, the core language has had a whole bunch of stuff added to it. Um, but like with C++, I don't know anybody who would write C++ and not use the templates library, right? And so while it's technically not part of the core, um, everybody uses it, and it's maintained as part of the compiler and stuff like that. Um, and so C++ has really grown over the years, but they did it in a smart way that, if you need to write bare metal and stay away from all the nice stuff, don't import those features, right? Um, JavaScript's a little bit different in that way because we don't control the runtime. The runtime's part of the browser. Um, and so in that case, well, you know what the other thing I should do? I was just watching this happen in the background. Um, I always recommend shutting down your editor, your code editor, when you're doing this kind of stuff. Pop it open when you need to make changes, but um, just make sure that you shut it down. The other thing that I should have made sure that we did was check to make sure, that we had everything committed in the working state before we jumped into this. Yeah, I agree with you, TVD Gamer. Putting them in the language, especially in open source, allows people to evaluate, what's the best way to do this, and propose solutions. Um, and even like .NET, you've got the core libraries that make up .NET, but then there's a whole ecosystem that's part of the language that you can add, right? So things like link, you don't have to use link, but it's part of .NET, and if you do, you're going to get all the benefits of that. But I was reading a discussion on scalars in .NET, which is a very fascinating idea to me. One of the things that .NET has gone into heavily lately is performance. And one of the big performance gains that they're getting is by analyzing the code and determining things like arrays and things, lists and things like that don't change in size. And then at compile time, it pre-allocates a fixed piece of memory that's not even really an array, it's a fixed piece of memory, a scalar. And by using those scalars, they're getting some crazy performance increases. And um, the article, and then I watched some YouTube on it, showed different ways that you can improve the performance of your application by introducing scalars and function calls and things like that. So we're going to get the install. Well, yeah, we'll get the install going, and then I'll grab this in the buffer. And while the install is running in the background, we're going to go take a look at what we got with this upgrade, right? So there we go. So the original migration is going to upgrade us to Angular 18.2. Fine. Some of these it's going to grab 18.0.3, right? So we're going to Angular 18, which is awesome. We're also going to NX 19, which is great. I love that it grabs schematics Angular now. So the TypeScript, they're upgrading to 7.3 for us. Cypress, they're grabbing, right? So they've done a whole bunch of upgrades for us in the file, and in fact, they even went to TypeScript 5.4.5, which is nice. And then the other thing to take a look at is here in the migrations. So they're doing some changes to nx.json. and they're changing the default to be workspace data. Move graph cache directory. It looks like they're doing. Oh yeah, this is the graph cache. They're updating the NX wrapper. Update to Cypress 13.6. So we'll need to run our component tests and make sure those all work after this. This is an upgrade to ESLint, preparing for the 9.0 upgrade. And this is just making sure that we grab the right version of the CLI. And they're updating the CLI again, I guess, and again. So through all of these, because of the version that we're going from and to, we've got a bunch of CLI upgrades in here. That's fine. They're adding the TypeScript ESLint utils package. And then they're going to take a look at two-way bindings. And then they're going to take a look at our HTTP providers. So there's a bunch in there. Our upgrade finished. It was successful. A whole bunch of stuff was changed. This is one of the reasons why I like NPM, right? Or PNPM is that we get to see, we went from this to this. So it's showing us every package that changed. And then we just run our migrations. NX is going to go through and it's going to run those migrations one by one. And hey, hello from MUC. MUC. Hey, NG Samurai. Welcome to the stream. MUC. Where is MUC? Is that an airport code? MUC airport code. Munich. NG Samurai. Welcome. Is MUC Munich? I just googled the airport code. I didn't know off the top of my head. Yeah. Hopefully, the reason I do Sunday streams in the morning is to be more friendly to the CET time zone and stuff like that. So hopefully this time zone works out well for you. I'd love to see, I'd love to have you hear more. But anyway, so it's gone through and it's run everything, right? I like to go back and just make sure as it runs these that everything looks good. So, it's updating package JSON and stuff like that. It's moving some stuff in NX JSON, updating package JSON. And the nice thing about running this rule here, the no name extra semicolon, is if you go back and read, it's telling you why, and it'll even give you the style project for style rules. This project is interesting because, whoops, I didn't want to do that. I went to right click on it to copy the link, just because that's what I'm trained to do in the browser. But eslint.style looks to be a competitor to Prettier. And so I'm interested to see how the community goes, because if we go back, where's the Y here? They've got some interesting stuff, and I do recommend reading this. So let me put this in the chat, because they make some interesting points, and I'm curious if Prettier is going to be making changes to react to this, or if because of the way they can handle rules like this, if ESLint is going to take over from Prettier. I don't know. But it's a fascinating idea. Um, everybody's already using ESLint. If ESLint can do what Prettier does, I wouldn't be surprised to see it take over, because then it's just one library, right? Instead of having two libraries that you've got to maintain and keep up to date and things like that. Um, and so, there's the Prettier stuff or the ESLint style stuff, and this is why I like to read through this, because a lot of times they put things in here that teach me things. And they moved some stuff and they updated Git and Prettier ignore. So they're installing this package here, and then that because they updated package JSON and they added some stuff, they run this. We can see that they upgraded the CLI to 18.3 and they added the utilities, and we're good at that point. So at this point, typically what I will do, I want to run tests, but what I typically will do is I will throw a filter in here and look for anything Angular related, because I know that all of my what do I want to call it? That's interesting. It's not recognizing the 18.3, even though it's there. I'm curious about that. And we can even see that here, I'm sure, in my package. Where's my CLI? Oh, it's got that at 18. Interesting. But my package lock has that set at 1803. We'll come back to that later. It's interesting. So NCU wants to change this from 18 to 18.3. You know what? Let's go ahead and do that. And this is why I like the NCU tool, is I can go in and I can filter it and I can say, hey, let's run an interactive upgrade on that. And I can ignore these other two. We'll get to them later. But I can say, hey, let's run this one. And there we go. And it's going to run pnpm install. It shouldn't do anything, but what it's done is it's upgraded my package JSON so that I say that I want to be around 18.3. So it'll try to be 18.3 and above. And we can see that it didn't do anything. All it did was install it and then it ran it. Or all it did was change it and then run it. So at this point, all of my Angular specific stuff, or anything that has Angular in the name, is either Storybook or Angular testing library. And I haven't even looked at Storybook yet. We didn't look at Storybook before. We need to look at that after we upgrade. Yeah, there's a lot here. And actually, I didn't paste that here. There we go. Need to make sure. I am looking into a suggestion from TBD Gamer about a different multi-streaming service. So I don't have to maintain two chats. Oh, I had already done that. I just posted it twice. That's what happens when you maintain two chats. All right. So at this point, we've made a whole bunch of changes. The next thing I like to do is just go in and see what the changes actually are. So we can see that they moved this no extra semicolon to an error, and they've also turned it off. So the no extra semi from ESLint, they turned off, and they turned on the TypeScript version. And so we can see what they've done there. In the git ignore, they just added that directory that was there. Prettier, they did the same. The migrations we already looked at. In nx.json, Oh, they took out the affected. Did they move it to the bottom? Oh, so the API for this function changed, and now it's just default base instead of being affected with a default base property. Interesting. Package.json we've looked at. We also looked at the lock. In our tsconfig, the formatting change. And so we're going to go ahead and stage all of these, and we're just going to say, hey, we upgraded NX and Angular. And we'll commit this, and then we're going to. I don't recommend doing this step right away. I do it on stream. My recommendation is run your tests and fix the tests, because you can always go backwards. The reason I'm doing this on stream is I want to force myself to fix it. And if I don't make it difficult for me to fix, then it's easy to let laziness sneak in, right? So the first thing we want to do is we're going to just start with the one that should be. We're going to start with the one that should be just kind of a gimme, right? Lint should still work the same out of the box. So we're going to run lint. It's going to run on everything right now, because we changed all of the files, right? By all of the files, I mean all of the base files. But we can see that all of our stuff ran, all of our linting runs, it works, great. Next level up in complexity, we run into our tests. So again, we're going to run our unit tests. We expect our component tests to fail. Everything else should pass. Our unit tests. After that, we run our component tests. And then we'll take a look at, I forgot that we had used Storybook in the Sudoku stuff. So we will also take a look at Storybook. It is a little bit, yeah. So this one failed. And we expected it to fail, right? 1 out of the 5 tests failed because it can't compile the file. That's fine. And one thing I may do is move the Angular testing library stuff into their own test files. Upgrade to 18 in my project. Yeah, I find upgrading to be Zen. It takes me a while because I like to be very thorough, right? NX, run many, and here we're going to go to our component tests. And we expect these to all pass too. But I do find it Zen, and it can take a while. So, it can take a couple of hours. What? So that's the Windows firewall kicking in. I don't know if you guys saw that on the stream, but I was having issues in the past with I use the Bitdefender firewall on my computer. I also have a router, and that router throughout the day runs port scans on all of my all of the machines in my network, and it reports any strange ports open to me, right? The problem I was having is that router would run a port scan, and then that killed my network connection. Bitdefender is just like, oh no, that network is running a port scan against us. Kill that network connection. I can't have that happen during the stream, right? So I was turning it off. But I haven't had that port scan issue in a while, and so maybe I should stop turning it off. Anyway, Our component tests ran. They were a little bit slower, but that's fine. Could be partially because of stream. Who knows why they're slower? Um, actually, we could. Um, One thing I love about NX is that it gives you the exact command that you need to run to reproduce this. So if I do this and I add the dash dash watch to it, we can see. Oh, we can see, which of our tests take a long time to run. Adding the dash dash watch throws, runs the Cypress GUI, um, telling us that we should upgrade Cypress. We'll probably do that. Um, Mismatched dependencies. We detected that you have a version dependency that are not officially supported. Found 1802, which, yeah, that makes sense. We are running. We'll run the Electron version. Um, so here we go. If we run the button hosts tests, it'll go in and it'll run them. We can get information about how long they take to run. So this one ran in 322 milliseconds. Great. Um, Cell component tests runs in 458 milliseconds. Great. Grid component tests. This is where we're taking our time. It takes 2 seconds, right? Because we're doing a bunch of arrow moving and things like that. And it's having to wait for things to happen. And then the pencil mark tests take 56 milliseconds. So most of our time is spent in these things. But yeah, you can go in and just, check and, see your tests also, running them in a GUI. We use this a lot um, for debugging tests and stuff like that, right? So we're in a good state. Everything runs. Now it's time to dig in again. And we're going to take off the Angular filter. We're going to see what is left to upgrade, right? And you have to take off the flag also. Um, okay, so we've got a bunch of stuff to upgrade. Striker, we can take a look at later. Mutative needs to upgrade. Yes, lib. Cypress. Oh, our component store. Component store doesn't have an 18 release, huh? And then we've got React and stuff in here because of Cypress. And Stylin's in here. Webpack is still here because of React. And then these are all of our testing upgrades. Let's get started. So where do I want to start? We'll migrate the NGRX component store and ESLint plugin. Actually, the first thing we want to do is we just want to do Volta in, and we're going to say node at 22 because that's available. And so as soon as I did that, Volta now knows that I'm on node 22. So now if I do node-v, we're on version 22.2. And I want to just make sure that our unit tests run. And it looks like they do. Oh, I was like, why did it only run one? It only ran one because you told it to only run one. There's a default project set. And so the default project is the Angular Sudoku. That's the other thing we should do is go ahead and serve this project, just to make sure that our node 22 doesn't break any of our tool chains. So that worked. It took a bit of time, but pnpm exec nx serve, and that should serve our Angular Sudoku project. That built. See, we're building a polyfills, and we've got our main.js and our styles.css. These are tiny. Like our Sudoku game is tiny. So there we go. If we go take a look at our network tab, let's pop this out. And let's just go ahead and refresh this. I want to see clear this. We'll refresh this page, and we're going to take a look at our network. So we can see that in our serve here, it only builds these initial chunks, and then as chunks are requested, then it builds them out. There's an optimization that's going on with your developer environment when you run ng-serve. They've optimized it so that we only build packages when they're needed, which is really cool because that's what allows it to run really, really fast. So we can see, there's actually 2.4 megabytes of data here. But we don't need that the DOM content loads in half a second, right? And then the entire load, 400 milliseconds. The entire load takes 500 milliseconds. And so, the DOM content loaded happens here, and then the load finished happens here, and then there's some stuff here. But we can see the waterfall that we actually spend time waiting, and this wait time are these packages being built. So our waterfall is pretty compact, right? With before 250 milliseconds, all of our downloads have happened, and we can see, as we click on these, we can see them highlighted up above, right? So here's our client script. This is our styles and our polyfills, right? So these three load right away, and that makes sense, right? Because they're the ones that were built right away. And they're all tiny. Like our styles is 300 bytes, and it's 100K for our client. And these get better in production builds because they're minified, and then gzip will make them smaller. And then we've got our main.js, and this is what loads, and we can do some stuff here to make this better. And that's another thing I want to take a look at is using defer to get these even smaller. We make our main smaller, right? And we've got our environments and stuff like that. And then we've got packages, right? Like our Angular core. So these chunks also come across. So we've got some pretty small chunks. Pack and bundle. Well, that's from an extension. There's a bunch here that we can optimize that I want to take a look at also. Go back to the console. Let's dock this to the right hand side, and there's just some weirdness with there's definitely some weirdness that happens with arc. But if we go in here and we move stuff around, we can see that our stuff's working. Put a 1 there, we still get our errors. So I think we're in a good state. We'll go ahead and stop serving this. And I'm trying to decide if I want to go in and make us zoneless or not. I don't think I do. I think we'll finish up with the upgrades and then we'll go to zoneless. So I want to grab the TypeScript stuff and the NGRX stuff. I want to take a look. So if I go to ngrx.io, go to the docs, go to state and component store. One thing, component store might lag a bit because at ngconf, they told us if you've got an existing component store, they're going to keep it up to date. But going forward, they recommend using ng signals or ngrx signals, right? Signal store. I was saying it's in developer preview. Oh, I didn't realize we were still in developer preview. Interesting. But I'm curious. So 17.2 is the latest version. Next is 18 beta. So there just might be some stuff that needs to happen before they go above 17. So we'll go ahead and we'll start with that one. We'll start with the NGRX component store. So again, we're going to use pnpm exec, and we're going to use nx migrate for this because it's going to grab any of the Angular upgrade packages and put them together in a migrations file. So we can just say ngrx /component -store. And of course I did pnpn because I do that a lot. And this zone.js won't matter when we're done. So I'm not even going to bother upgrading that one. So we can see that it's grabbing the component store at the latest. It should also grab the ESLint plugin, which was what gave us the information about the return types. So we're going from 17.1 to 17.2. I don't expect there to be any migrations at all. Yeah, and it didn't. So we'll go ahead and run this. And so while that's running, I think the next thing we'll do is we'll grab this TypeScript ESLint plugin. And using, we're going to use NX to migrate this one also, because this TypeScript ESLint actually has some Angular upgrade stuff built into it. Everything else we're going to, well, we'll probably do ngmocks for sure. So we're going to work through the blue. I'm skipping over Striker for right now because it's broken. I should do mutative tsjust and tslib, so we'll get those fixed too. After we do, so we'll get all of the green. We'll do all of the green and all of the blue after we do the ones that are Angular specific, and then we're going to get down into like Spectator and Storybook and things like that and migrating them. And there might be more going on there. But we'll be using NX Migrate to help with this too. ESLint, we're going to leave it version 9, but we will upgrade the plugins. Storybook will upgrade to version 8. And we'll upgrade this plugin, but we're not going to touch Zone.js because we shouldn't be using it anymore. So there's all of that. We just upgraded. And here, I just want to run my tests after running that to see if there are any surprises. While that's going on, we're going to go over here and we're just going to stage all changes. And we're just going to say that we upgraded NGRX component store. And I think, so I need to end my stream. I got a couple other things I've got to prepare for this afternoon. I'm helping a friend prepare for interviews this week and things like that. So I need to make sure I end on time. But what I do want to do is just make sure that we get all of the green stuff done. Well, all of the green and the blue upgrades, and that way we'll just be left with the red upgrades tomorrow. And then that's when we can start looking at Zoneless once we've got all of this stuff done. So let's grab this one right here. And we can just say pnpm exec and nx migrate. And we're going to paste that one in. And just in case it doesn't grab the parser, I'm going to grab that into my copy buffer right now. Everything else I'm looking at, like Prettier, will be fine to run. I mean, there aren't going to be any migrations for that. Cypress. Yeah, I think all of the rest of this stuff should be fine to just run. Mutative will be fine. ngMox is the only one that I'm not sure about. We might do ngMox through a migration also. We can see that it upgraded the ESLint plugin. And we can even see that here. You go look, it only upgraded the ESLint plugin, so it didn't upgrade the parser, and it didn't create any migrations. So we're going to go ahead and also upgrade the parser, do them both at the same time. And this is one of the nice things about NX is that you can go through and run multiple upgrades like this and then do your install once you're to a place where you want to be. And I know I put ngMox into the paste buffer, but we'll go grab it again. So there we go. We've upgraded our ESLint. To test that, we're just going to go pnpm exec nx run many, and here we're just going to run the linter. I am really, so at work I use Warp. Have you guys used Warp? I know I keep harping on this. This is an amazing terminal. And I really miss a lot of the features. Like coming from Mac to Windows, this is the only thing I miss is this terminal. Everything else, actually, I prefer a lot of things on Windows, or they seem to be fairly even for me. That could be because most of my life I've developed in Windows, but there's just a lot of amazing things about Warp. And I am on the wait list. I can't wait for it to be available. So if you guys code in on your Mac, give the Warp terminal a try. It is absolutely one of my favorite experiences. Upgrade, and we upgraded TypeScript -ESLint. There we go. And we'll push that. And our linting it did it all from the cache. So I don't know if it ran, but we can say skip cache. And it'll force it to run again. You haven't seen Warp before? Yeah, I was introduced to Warp by a friend of mine who works at NX, and he did a lot of work with Warp for NX. And so at ngconf we were talking, and I decided to just go put it on my Mac for work, and wow, it's amazing. And it's still a pre-release terminal, which is crazy. And I wish I could show it to you on my work machine, but there's stuff on there that I definitely can't put on stream. So anyway, the linter works, and so now we're going to do pnpm exec. Or no, I don't think so. We're just going to go and we're just going to grab the rest. So we're just going to grab all the rest of the green and the blue. And green are patch versions, so these shouldn't affect anything. They're probably bug fixes. Blue are minor versions, so they're sticking within the same major. There shouldn't be they should be backwards compatibility. But red are all of our major changes, and there could be breaking stuff in there. So if we look, we're upgrading Striker, we're upgrading Mutative, TSJust, and TSLib. That's fine. We're upgrading the Webpack Dev Server, ngMox, Prettier. React is just there for Cypress. We're upgrading StyleLint, which is nice, and then our Webpack, which is just there for React. And so that's everything that we're going to upgrade. These will be the last upgrades that we'll do today. I'm going to run linting and testing and all of that after making these upgrades. And then once we run those, I think I'm going to call it for the day, and we'll jump into the red upgrades tomorrow because I expect there to be breaking changes. So we're probably going to have to go through those one by one. So here, I get lazy on these commits. I just say that we upgraded dependencies usually is upgraded dependencies. There's so many libraries, I just don't want to list them all. And there we go. So now we're just going to do pnpm exec nx run many. And we could start with lint. Let's see if it picks up that it needs to run lint again without the cache. It did. One of the cool things about Warp is like the order that I run these in, I typically run them in the same order. And so with Warp, I can go and I can highlight these and I can say, hey, create a workflow from this. And so it will create a workflow from it. And then it uses AI to analyze, hey, was this successful? If it wasn't, let's stop, let's report. And then I can resume the workflow. A lot of really, really cool stuff. With any other terminal, I would either have to create a script file or something like that. So that's a big deal. Tar 512. I mean, it looks sweet sometimes. Yeah. Okay. I'm not sure. I mean, those are English words for most of it. But I'm okay. Sure. I'm not sure if you're a bot or not. 'Cause that seems like um, a very AI response to a hallucination. Um, fair enough, exactly. Like, okay, sure, whatever. We'll run our component tests and then we'll run our serve. I don't expect any of this to have broken. But again, when doing upgrades, discipline is discipline is important, right? Don't make assumptions. Um, make sure you follow the steps that you use during your upgrades every time. Make sure you're running your tests. Make sure you're running your linters. Make sure you're running all of that stuff. Um, because if you make assumptions, something may have broken, right? It may not be what you expected. Um, and that can lead to bigger issues down the road. So if you're going to do upgrades, make sure you're disciplined about it. Make sure you follow the steps. Make sure you're constantly checking, right? Um, and I guess like for personal projects, it probably doesn't matter as much. I like to be disciplined in my personal projects because that translates over typically into also how I work. And so I don't want to introduce like laziness into my work also. And it looks like things are good. We can do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oh, 9. I think that's enough to define a unique puzzle. And so we should be able to get it to solve the puzzle for us. And I'm not sure if the puzzle I created has a unique solution. But with 9 cells, our solver was able to find a solution. I think it's 11 actually. Minimum number of cells needed for unique Sudoku game. 17. Oh, so the reason it was able to solve it so easily is that I only gave it 9, and so there weren't. It was likely to not have you. I thought it was 11. So that I'm glad I googled it. Um, so so 17. And the interesting thing is that the search space is so large, even with 17 clues, that they can't really prove that 17. They've used a lot of computer tests to try and prove that 16 doesn't work, but they can't. I mean, they've proven that 17 works, but they haven't found a counter case against 17. And that's the tough thing, right? Is that the search space on a Sudoku game is so big, right? There's 81 cells. You take away 17, and we're down to 74. And that's 9 to the 74th, right? That's a huge amount of search space. I don't know. It's it's at least bigger than, we'll say, like 10 to the 50. Maybe bigger than 10 to the 70. I don't know. But that search space, well, and that's not necessarily true. Yeah, I don't know. It's not necessarily true because of the Sudoku game rules, but the search space is massive. Um, so, um, but at least I reminded myself that 17 is needed for a unique solution. So, um, like if we were to do, we could do like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then down here we could just go backwards. That doesn't work, but that does. 7, 8, 9, right? And then in the middle, we'll just give it like a 1, right? That's 18, that's 19. So it's likely that this has a unique solution, but um, again, there's no way to know. What we can see is that the solver is struggling, and that's why cells are disappearing, because it's hitting a point where it's like, okay, I can't go forward. And for anybody who's curious about the solver is using wave function collapse. And so with wave function collapse, what it's looking for is it's looking for the places with the least amount of entropy. Like this 8 has very little entropy because it can only be an 8. And then because it can only be an 8, it causes very few changes elsewhere, right? So um, so we when I say entropy, what I'm actually saying is um, I'm looking for the cell with the fewest number of possible changes, and then I'm picking from that because um, that is a good indicator of entropy. Because if I were to pick like this 6 here, if I were to pick this as a 6, well, 7's still a possibility, which means that if I pick wrong here, there's a potential for this to be wrong. This is a square, which is a form of an x-wing, which there's a way to determine what needs to be where. Actually, this isn't solvable. This doesn't have a unique solution. Because if I put a 7 here, this has to be a 6, and this has to be a 7, and this has to be a 6, right? That's a solution. But if I put a 6 here, this has to be a 7, this has to be a 6, and this has to be a 7. This puzzle doesn't have a unique solution. So even though we picked 18 cells, this one didn't have a unique solution. Thank you, TBD Gamer. And I need to end too. That's a good reminder to me. Thank you guys, everybody, for being here. Means a lot. Have a great rest of your weekend. I will be picking this up tomorrow evening. We'll be finishing up all of the red in the. It's a ways back. Anyway, all of the red in the in this command. We can take a look at it here. So I'm going to be picking up all of these. We'll upgrade all of these. Once these are all upgraded, then we're going to go in and we're going to remove zones, and we're also going to take a look at defer to make our packages smaller. So we're going to take a look at some bundle sizes. We'll do some exploration of bundle sizes and see what we can do with bundle sizes to make our stuff load even faster. Right now we're around half a second. It would be nice if we could get our load time to under 200 milliseconds. That would be amazing. So let's see if we can do something with that too. So yeah, thank you everybody for being here. We'll see you tomorrow.